Hello, I'm Dr. Matthew Badorf, and this is the introductory video for our summer Introduction to Ethics class. First off, I'd like to say it's really great to have you all. I'm really looking forward to being able to talk with you throughout the course of the next few weeks online, and maybe I'll see some of you in person. This stuff is it's important to me personally, and I hope that over the next few weeks you'll discover an appreciation for being able to study ethics in this academic kind of way. It's one of my favorite topics, and I'm really glad to be able to share it with you. This is really probably the first one of these videos that you'll see by me, and most of the lectures that I have recorded are sort of, about the course. This is more just the kind of showing you, walking you through the syllabus that people often do on the first day of class. I've tried to write all of the stuff that I give you in such a way that it's comprehensible, if you're just reading it, but I know that it's often useful to have somebody kind of walk through it with you. Although, of course, you can't ask me questions as we go, I hope that this will still be helpful to you. So this is just a supplement to the syllabus and the other stuff, and all the stuff that that's in there is important, and you should read through it carefully, but I wanted to give you the highlights. Okay, so by the time you're able to see this video, you should have copies of all the documents that I'm going to talk about here. You should hopefully have gotten them in an email from me, and they are available on the course eLearn site. There might be some changes to some of them as we go, so be sure that you know where they are on the eLearn site and they're sort of comfortable getting at them so that you can get at it in new documents or new versions of them. So I'm just going to start with the syllabus. There's not all that much on the syllabus because it would be so unwieldy and long if I put everything on it, but it's got the location of my office if you want to come visit me. It's got my office hours, and I think here I'll just say, since it's a summer course, I don't have regular office hours the same time every week, so there's just this long list of basically days that I'm in the office. I have about an hour-long commute time, so I've got I'm doing my office hours in big chunks. But if you aren't available during those times, or you want to talk with me about something and it's a few days before my next set of office hours, please just feel free to email me. I'm happy to email with you, or we can set up a time where we could Skype together, or maybe even have a phone call, or maybe even stop by and I could either meet you someplace around Knoxville or around Morristown or somewhere in between if there's really a need to meet in person. So we could probably meet at a coffee shop or something somewhere, for example. So please just get in touch with me. I really want to be available to you. So just if you want to talk, then please just get in touch and we can talk. You're not restricted to these hours. But anyway, there's a list of hours. There's my office phone number, which, as I said, I won't be in the office so much. That won't be so useful. Some general information about the course. And then there's a whole bunch of college mandated stuff that you've probably seen before because I think they're on all of the syllabi, but if you haven't read it recently, it's good to be reminded how you can get in touch with support services. There's help when tutoring for English and mathematics and some other stuff, so take a look at that. If you go down to the additional course details, that's where we sort of have the stuff I've written, and I'll just take you through real quickly the class policies. Basically, well, I'm going to read you the second one here. Think of this class as an impartial, dispassionate, free, and rational thinking about some contentious moral issues. For the purposes of this course, though I think this is good practice just in general, I'll ask you to set aside your own likes and dislikes, your feelings, your upbringing, and instead concentrate on giving reasons for the positions you defend and against the ones you criticize. And the reasons you offer should be, as far as possible, ones that any sane, rational, clear-thinking person could be expected to accept, or at least recognize, even if they don't agree with you about it. What I'm getting at is just this. I don't care as your instructor anyway. I care as a person, but as your instructor, I don't really care what you think about any particular issue. I care about what sort of reasons you can provide. So that's what I'm basically going to be evaluating when it comes time for tests and papers and things. I'll be evaluating your reasons for a position, not your position itself. And I expect the same from you. I expect that you to evaluate the reasons that are given in favor of positions, and I expect you to be willing to think carefully and challenge those reasons, whether they're from a particular philosopher that you're reading, or from your classmates, or from me. But this all takes for granted that you're going to do your best to respect those with which you're engaging, that you're going to try to keep your cool and see things from the other person's side. Assuming that we're all sort of rational, sane, clear-thinking people like you, and that we really want to get at the truth, even if we're really confused about something. So that's really the attitude that I hope that you'll be able to engage with in this class, that you'll be able to take some really contentious things. We're going to be talking about hard subjects. I mean, the first applied ethics subject that we're talking about is abortion. And it's understandable that people have strong feelings about these things, and that's good. But I think it's a really valuable thing for us to be able to sort of come and reason together, and that's what this class is all about. The other main thing that I want to tell you about from the syllabus is just this note that you should be reachable via your eLearn email. That's how I'm going to get in touch with you, and that's how you should get in touch with me, generally speaking. So really just make sure that you try to check that at least once a day during at least the work week. And then there's a couple of notes about what counts as your first day of class attendance and your last day of class attendance, which is important for some things as far as when you can drop and get a refund, that kind of thing. Okay, that's all I have to say about the syllabus. I suppose I'll probably say this at the end of each document, but please, if you have questions, feel free to get in touch with me. But for right now, I'm going to move on to the online course schedule. I don't think that I have very much to say here. I hope that it's fairly straightforward. We've just got lists of units. Each unit has some dates associated with it. And the dates are important because those are the dates that the discussion board for that unit will be open. Except in rather special circumstances, the discussion boards close at the end of those dates so that we can move on to the next one together. It's kind of important that we all stay together on this so that you can be talking to each other. So as a general rule, you can't turn in discussion board posts late. But in any case, we've got these rather hard and fast unit dates, and then for each unit, in addition to that being the time that the discussion board for that unit is opened, there's a list of things you're supposed to read, sometimes some things you're supposed to watch, and maybe a miscellaneous assignment or two for that unit. Now, since we're in a constrained summer time frame, we're really moving through this quickly. So each week typically has 2 units rather than 1. As it would be during the semester, and the units are a bit more packed than they would usually be. So this is probably a good time to say, I hope that you've taken, in line, that you've thought about the fact that we're going to be going through a whole semester's worth of stuff in a little over a month. And that's going to be tough. And if you've got other things going on, like maybe a summer job, it's going to be really tough. So, as Jesus said, count the cost and make sure this is something that you really want to do. It's much better to just decide not to do it early on than to kind of go through it and kind of, do a half-baked job the whole time and just end up failing the class. Okay, so that as far as that warning goes. You might notice that our first unit is starting May 31st to June 2nd, and then we've got sort of 2 halves of the class, each of which are about 2 weeks long. The first half, we're going to tackle this meta-ethics and normative ethics stuff, and then the second half, we're tackling applied ethics. I'm not going to explain what those terms mean, but you should check out my other introductory lecture that talks about actually what we're going to be studying, and then hopefully that will all make a bit more sense. And then just note, there are some things in bold during some of these units. These are the sort of major assignments for the term, so make sure that you put those on your calendar right away, and especially the 2 exams and the final paper. Okay, all that for the course schedule. Now I'll probably spend a bit more time here with the Introduction to Ethics Assignments document. This really gives you basically the prompts for everything that you've got to do for the whole term. So if you have any questions about any kind of assignment, check here first. Probably the answer is here, at least I hope so, because it's almost 5,000 words long. And then if you can't find the answer here, then get in touch with me. Okay, so basically I'm just going to start off walking through this with a discussion board post. This is kind of our substitute for class, and in some ways it's easier than class because you don't need to drive in, you don't need to sit down and be there at a particular time, but in other ways it's harder because in order to really have a kind of a dynamic discussion, for you to learn things, you've actually are going to have to participate maybe more than you would if you were just sort of sitting in class, hugging the wall and trying not to talk. So you're going to have to make these discussion board posts. And the first page of this really just describes kind of why that is, a little bit about what it takes for you to do well. Basically, the gist is it's really important for you as somebody who's learning philosophy, and ethics is a branch of philosophy. It's really important for you to actually do it, to not just kind of passively receive, but to actually be practicing. I mentioned in this document an analogy with painting. So if you want to become a good painter, you actually have to paint some paintings, even if the paintings you paint at first are kind of bad. You can't just read about great painters and then sort of magically become good at painting. And I'm teaching this. I know that you probably don't want to go off and become a professional philosopher like I did, but the idea is there are certain kinds of skills that philosophy and ethics are supposed to teach, and certain kinds of wisdom about the issues that we're going to talk about that you can pick up by talking with people in this course. And you have to actually be engaging in an active kind of way to do that. So that's why this isn't a course where you just kind of sit back and listen to a bunch of lectures. You have to be writing stuff. Okay, so there's a bit of discussion of that. As far as what you actually need to do in particular, there's a section, if you scroll down a bit, called Specific Discussion Board Requirements, and there are basically 3 things. First off, for each unit, so remember for this course, each unit is about half a week, it's 3 days. Each unit, you need to start at least one new thread on the discussion board for that unit. So I'll have something saying, Unit 1, you'll go click on that, and then you can make a new discussion thread. And I call it a new post, and that's kind of the main part of this assignment. Your new post is where you're going to have a kind of a substantive discussion about the readings or something that you watched. And the idea is that you're trying to engage with the course material. You might be asking questions. You might be objecting to something that one of the readings said, because the readings won't all be agreeing with each other. And, philosophy and ethics are really things where, in a sense, there are no experts. In a sense, because there is a sense in which there are experts who know a lot more than people who have never studied it, but they're all contentious issues, and you're not expected to just agree with everything that you read. So you might be objecting to it. You might, if you have some difficulty with a passage, sort of ask some questions about what it means and then offer your own partial understanding of what it means. Or you might notice some connections or implications between the readings or readings and other stuff that we've done. It's just something that really shows that you've read the thing and shows that you've read it beyond the first couple of pages. Because, if I keep getting posts from you, week after week where you just say, this opening example on page 1 of the reading was really neat, I'll start to think, I don't think that they're actually doing the readings, and that will hurt your grade. So show that you're doing the readings, that you're going beyond the first page, and show that you're thinking about them, that you're engaging with them, that you're not just passively reading them, but that you're trying to say something about them. Okay, the other important thing to know about this new post requirement is that it's due a day before the end of the unit in question, so 24 hours before. So if a unit ends on a Wednesday, the new post is actually due by midnight on Tuesday. If the unit ends at midnight on Saturday, the new post is actually due by midnight on Friday. And this is because I want you to be able to engage with each other and respond to what each other says, and you're not going to be able to do that very well if sort of the first things that everybody says are all at the last minute. So the main post that you put up needs to be at least 24 hours before. Then you need to make at least 2 response posts. Those are basically just responses to threads that other people have started. Or you could respond to somebody on your thread. If they responded to you, you could be going back and forth. Basically, these could be shorter. They don't need to be nearly as sort of substantive and meaty, but they should be engaging in a real way with what people say, and they should be going beyond a sort of oh, hey, that's cool, thanks for contributing. Like, those are great things to say to people, and I really want you guys to encourage each other, but you should be engaging with it at a bit more of an intellectual level than that, talking about why it is that you agree with them, or adding to what they say in some way, or raising some kind of question for them to answer, or pointing out some kind of problem that maybe they ought to think about, that kind of stuff. And then the last requirement is that you should read all of the posts and replies made by others. So basically just, keep up with what's going on the threads. This is like, like listening in a class discussion. Okay, so you got your new post requirement, 2 response posts, and reading. These are the minimum requirements. You're encouraged to go beyond them. The best way to raise your grade in the discussion boards is to make further quality posts. It's not really a good strategy to just make a bunch of really bad posts, but making another substantive post that's just as good as your initial one is a good way to earn a better grade. Having response posts where you're really engaging in a discussion and where it seems like progress is being made and coming to an understanding of the material, that's also a good way. Typically, if you do the minimum requirements and you do a decent job, you'll get an 80 out of 100 for that unit. So, adding those extra posts and making sure they're good, having really substantive posts that do a lot of connections, that show a great understanding of the material, that show a kind of a fearless willingness to talk about controversial subjects in ways that are respectful. All these sorts of things can help to boost your grade, above that 80. And of course, failing to meet the minimum requirements, you'll probably get lower than an 80. Okay, that's all that I have to say right now about those discussion boards. I'm going to move on to the final paper. So you're going to have a paper. Again, this is because it's really important if you're going to really master this stuff that you actually engage in it. I'm not just looking for a paper that, shows me that you've read the stuff. I know you've read it from the tests and the discussion boards. I'm looking for you to show some creative thought about what you're reading and some actual reaction to it that expresses something about the reasons that you think should push us one way or another on an issue. Okay, so I have a lot to say about the papers here, but I don't think I should go through this in detail because at this point in the semester, you're not thinking about the final paper, and that's okay. But I will just say real quickly that you should take a careful look through this in a week or two once you kind of get into the swing of things. And I'll tell you that the paper has basically got to be an argumentative philosophy paper, which means you're not going to be like just expressing your personal journey about something or describing your views. You're going to try to give people reasons to agree with you about something. And in particular, you're going to try to give them reasons to agree with you about what I call a Puma thesis, which is something that's described a bit in this document and more in a series of slides that you can read later on. That will actually be assigned reading later on. Okay, just skimming through this, I think I'll point out the paper details. There's sort of a set of notes here. The paper should be approximately 12 to 1,600 words. I know that some of you will just have gasped and fallen off of your chairs, but believe me, it's okay. You can handle this. And I say this for a couple of reasons. First off, if you spend much of the next month working on this, kind of as you do the other things, which I expect that you'll be doing because I'm going to give you some assignments to help you with that, then you'll find that you start to learn enough about the subject that writing 12 to 1,600 words doesn't really feel all that hard. Once you get started on it, you just find yourself putting more and more words, and all of a sudden you're over 1,000 before you know it. 1,200 to 1,600 words is about 5 or 6 pages, just if you're having difficulty thinking about it in terms of words. The other thing is this is just an approximate count. I don't want you to be sitting there thinking, oh, crap. I only have 1,100 words. How can I ever do well on this paper? This is really just something to give you a guideline about how much space it usually takes to make a good paper. But quality matters much more than quantity. If you end up with saying really good things, having really insightful things to add to the conversation, and you come up with less than 1,200, then that's fine. Okay. There should be citations, but I don't particularly care about the system, so you don't need to worry about the specifics of that. There's some more details. There's a reminder about plagiarism. We're now on page 6, by the way, if you're following along. And I hope that by this point in your college careers, you have a fairly good idea of what that means. But really, it applies to not just quotes, but any idea you get from a source, and you should make sure to give that source proper credit. And you should also give due credit to anybody who helps you with the paper, whether it's me or somebody from the Writing Center or a fellow student or a family member. And you should just include some kind of note somewhere before or after the paper. There's no particular format for this, but just some kind of note thanking them. Okay, then there's a grading rubric, and I encourage you guys to take a look through that. And some final words of advice, and I'll just point out that with the first one, there are 3 hyperlinks to great sources that tell you a lot more about how to write a good philosophy paper. So if you're feeling at all concerned about this, or maybe even if you aren't feeling concerned, I'd really recommend that you take a look at those. One of them will actually be assigned later on in the course. Okay, so all that was about the discussion boards and then the final paper. Now we come to some other writing assignments. These are sort of what I want to do instead of having you write a second paper, which is often what happens in philosophy classes. Instead of having you write a second paper, I'd really just like for you to do some assignments that are designed to kind of scaffold you up to that main paper. Scaffolding, basically, the metaphor here is that even before, you can actually build the bridge, you've got to build the scaffold that allows you to, move around and get to the places where you're building stuff. So the idea with these assignments is that they give you some tools and some things to practice with before you have to do the big job of the final paper. So they're all 3 of them in this term. They're all pass-fail. If you turn them in late, you get a penalty. It's the same penalty as it is for the main final paper. I didn't mention what that is, but basically it's a third of a letter grade for every 48 hours, approximately. You can see some details if you want them on page 6, but just think of it as basically every 2 days you lose a third of a letter grade if you're late. But as long as you're on time and you're basically doing what I'm asking for, with these writing assignments, you'll get full credit. So that's a nice thing. The first one is this flagged reading assignment. You're going to basically be going through a reading. It's I believe it's chapter 9 of our textbook, but it says on the assignments on the assignment schedule exactly what it is when it's due. But you're basically going to be going through a reading and you're going to be flagging it. Flagging is something that is a little bit like highlighting, but really it's different in almost every important way. It's one of the most effective ways that we have for helping people to understand things that they're reading. Basically, flagging is writing notes to yourself as you go so that you can understand in a second read through exactly what's going on in a better way, and so that you can just skim the reading and look at your sort of flagged notes and get a sense of what the overall structure is. It's really helpful. There's a reading in this first unit by a guy named Concepcion who talks about it, and he basically kind of lays out a good strategy for reading philosophy, which I hope will really help you as you go through the term. And this flagged reading assignment basically is just to give you practice doing the sorts of things that he talks about. You're going to be taking this reading, you're going to be writing stuff in the margins, and I have a bit of instructions about how to do that here, and then you're going to be uploading it into the Dropbox on eLearn. Okay, and then for the second one, it's very like the first. It's kind of just like the next story in the scaffolding. This time, though, you are going to be selecting a reading that we haven't done yet as a class and doing the flagged reading on that. So you're going to be selecting something. Basically, it'll end up being something from like the applied ethics part of the class, and you're going to do a flagged reading on that and upload it in the same way. The main difference is that you're also going to add a short, just 1 page or less reading response where you basically just take a paragraph or 2 and describe what you think the main argument of the author is and maybe whether or not you agree with it. And the point of this assignment is really, first off, to just give you some more practice flagging and thinking through these sorts of things and learning how to read really carefully, but it's also designed to give you an opportunity to start to think about whatever it is you want to do your final paper on. So the goal is you sit down, and when you get started on this second assignment, you say to yourself, okay, what do I really want to have for my final paper? Maybe you want to write about issues about gun control, or whether marijuana should be legalized, both of which are things that are have chapters in our anthology. Even though we're not talking about them, you could write on them and just respond to those chapters in our anthology. And so you say, right, I want to write about whether marijuana should be legalized. So then you pick one of the things on drugs in our anthology, and you just do this flagged reading and the reading response on that. And then you have a sort of a leg up. You've already started to think about this stuff and to read this really carefully, because really you can't do a good philosophy paper without really carefully reading the people who are written on the same topic before you. So you're going to be responding to them and interacting with them. One of the worst things people can do in a philosophy paper is write a whole paper that's based on a misreading of their source. That's not really a recipe for success. So this is designed to get you thinking deeply about what the source actually says early on. Okay, so those are the first 2, and then the last of these sort of special writing assignments before the final paper is just a proposal for the final paper. So you'll find a paper proposal form on the eLearn site, and you will just fill it out. This will involve several paragraphs of writing, and so you should make sure that you start on it early, and you'll just submit it into the appropriate Dropbox. Basically, the idea here is to give you an opportunity to work through what it is that you want to say without having to write a full draft of it. So I'll be asking you questions like, what do you want your thesis to be, and what are your main arguments for the thesis? And the idea is, you just jot down your thoughts, and the idea is that this paper proposal sort of forces you to start having those thoughts earlier on, which, early thoughts, if you start thinking about it early, then you'll have time to kind of work through the kinks in your ideas and have a really great paper by the end of the term. It's designed to get you started thinking through it early, and I'm going to give you personal feedback on the paper proposal. This is going to be the main source of feedback from me, sort of as you write the paper. If you want to turn in a rough draft, I also try to give people feedback on those, but you're guaranteed to get feedback on this. So I encourage you to try to work hard on this paper proposal and really put some detail and thought into it so that I can give you really great feedback that helps you to make course corrections before you've put in all the effort of writing a whole draft. Okay, well, we're almost done, I promise. I should mention that there are 2 tests. They're both take-home tests. You don't ever need to come into campus to take them, and they're going to be open book, largely because, I can't really stop you if you're sitting at home. And they're each just 15% of your grade, and there'll probably be some essay questions and some short answer questions and probably like some multiple choice and true false. Probably focused on the essay questions. We'll talk about them more as they come up, though, but I just want to point out to you that they exist. And then the last thing in this document is just a note about what counts for what letter grade. So for an A, you have to get at least a 90, and then I have all of the assignments broken down by what percentage of your final grade they are. Okay, so I've walked through all 3 of these sort of main documents. These are sort of the foundational documents for the course. If you have a question about anything, they're the first place to go. And then if they don't really seem to answer it to your satisfaction, then just let me know and we'll have a chat about it. All right, again, I'm really looking forward to working with you guys. This is really exciting for me, and I hope that you're looking forward to it too. All right, bye.